Hi there, this is Popo, I hope you're fine. Welcome back to the Matches New Era Tournament, Round 1. And today we're going to review the two games played between Yosh and Artika. So let's get started. Okay, so for this first game, Yosh gets the white pieces with the Yetis faction, and Artika gets the black pieces with the Chtulu faction. The Yeti faction is a faction that allows you to capture several pieces of your opponents on the same turn, so it can lead you to very small tricks and tactics. But at the same point, if you play a somehow peaceful game, maybe you can get a very cool positional play and then try to capture several pieces of your opponent on the same time, because your pieces are pretty strong when they're able to capture pieces, so maintaining the tension somehow can be good. On the other hand, the Cthulhu faction is a faction that has no special power on its own for the pieces. The pieces are just collecting some mana points for the king, which is a brain here. Once the brain has enough mana points, it can decide to cast out of some pieces to make them promote. So the most time it would be the pawn type units, which are called limbs, but somehow it can also be your queen in the late game if you have a lot of mana points. So technically, if you are up for a very peaceful game and somehow positional, maybe you can get something out of it. So the clash between these two factions can be very interesting. So let's see the game. The game starts with pawn to d3, and you see that already the brain has 2 mana points. Why? Because this is of the mana points generated by the wings. Every time a wing, which is the rook type unit, is on the board, just here passively, it generates 1 mana point for the king. So as there are 2 wings in the beginning of the game, it generates 2 mana points. So we have limb to e5, Tusk to c3, again 2 mana points, and eyeball to b4. Here what's interesting is that this eyeball, if it dares to capture the piece, would immediately gain 10 MPs. But does have worth the try to immediately capture this, because this is a bishop type unit, so you have to be careful. The rook to d2 is here to defend, then we have took to c6, Tusk to f3, limb to d5, trying to get some pressure over here. Please note that opening is perfectly playable. This is called the Mises opening reverse trap variation. This is not often played, we don't see that at a high level chess, but somehow you have some 20 or 2100 players which are playing this on the chess players servers like Lichess or chess.com. So we have pawn to e4, we have limb to d4, and now Tusk to d5, asking for a trade, eventually. Here you see that the Tusk has a little mana stuff here on it. This is because it's now surrounding the tube. Every piece surrounding the tube at the beginning of the turn of the Chtulu would make them 1 mana point. So on the next turn, normally the brain would have some kind of, I don't remember if this is odd or even number. Yeah, I know that in French this is impair. I don't know what is in English. So here you have to be careful. You can't really take, although this is the more popular move to trade here, but you can't really take because of the sage. If the sage captures a piece, for example this one, it would also remove the twin brother of this piece, so this means also this one would be removed on the game, even if the sage would not move. So for example, if you have this, it captures, it stays in place, and then these 2 pieces are removed from the board. It only works with pieces, not pawns, else that would be buffed. So in the game, normally you have to play, for example, the eyeball to d6 or the eyeball to c5. This is one of the main variations here to be played. But on the game, Artika decided to take the lead and trade the eyeball for the two eyeballs for the brute. And what's actually interesting is that this is not much blunder than this. If you see the mana points, you already have 25 mana points, so this is half of, let's see what is the promotion here with 15p, a knight. So that would be this piece, the tube. So technically, you're about to recover your tube later on in the game. For me, this is a bad move, but that can be also understood. What's actually funny here is that these two pieces don't have much activity than this. Also with this. So if somehow the Cthulhu gets a good activity and somehow can get rid of this, that would be interesting. Also, maybe you want to consider letting this piece be, because it would get the surround mana point here. But in the game, we have Tusk to e7, which is played, and we have a trade catcher. And now we have pawn to h4, which is played. Pawn to h4 can be understood on the fact that maybe you want to attack on the king side with this move. Maybe you try to slide this, castle this way, and try to, I don't know, get this here and then push that. That can be understandable. Here, I would rather impressed by this kind of move, c3, when it wants to exchange a lot, and then maybe you'll attack here, and if possible, you want maybe to push this to let the brutes be on the game, and then you castle somehow kingside. So I don't know. This is a plan that can be seen, because with pawn to h4, it clearly indicates that maybe you want to castle queenside or not castle. So limb to h6 is here to protect somehow, not to let this advance. Now we have pawn to g3. Also, pawn to g4 was playable, even this is a little weaker. But here, because you have to slide your pieces the good way to make some powerful attack, so can be understandable. But here we have pawn to g3 instead. So limb to a5, counter-attacking on the queen side. We have brute to h3, which can go to this very nice spot here. Even this can be kicked out. So you have really to time well what you want to do. Also, what can be very interesting with the brute is to slide this here, then slide this here. Why? Because this brute allows you to capture any pawn or piece that is in front of it on the summit turn. So technically, for example, if there's an enemy pawn here on the next turn, next time you have to play, then this would vanish, simply. Here you have to be a little careful, because if this vanishes, then this is just captured by the wing. But later on, this can be a very cool tactic somehow. So be aware of this. Limb to b5 is played, we have pawn to a4, so asking a question, and now we have limb to b4. Here, the best move for me is to close the position and be sure that the pieces would be very passive. So for example, playing this move like b3 should be considered, as this tube wouldn't do anything because every square is controlled. Here, this wing takes a little time to replace. You don't have a real attack with this because this is well defended, and maybe here this can be the time for the Yetis to try to strike by pushing the pawns here. So this was definitely something to consider. But in the game we have pawn to c3, so wanting to open on the queen side looks dangerous, but we'll see what happens. We have limb captures, pawn captures, and in the game we have Tusk to d8. I don't understand this move, to be quite honest. Here, what could be interesting is to capture this, and after capture, then you can put the heart here, and this is pinned, and somehow you have to make the trade. And now, two things happen. First, you have 46 MPs, so later on, if one of your limbs cross the enemy side, you can try to promote it to a knight, so including this piece, first time. Also, please note that these limbs don't promote on the back rank, but also on the two last ranks, so it can promote even here. So this is early promotion in this kind of faction. So interesting to try to maintain it, and try somehow to get some pawn exchange, maybe launch this here, or launch these pawns somehow. I don't know how you organize your pawn chain, to be sure that somehow one pawn would be here, and then you can try to promote it. So now there's something to deal with, because there's a problem, and that's not that easy because there's a pressure over this pawn, so maybe you'll have to castle and put this here, but at the same point your opponent is going to get quickly to the attack and try to promote. Then you can have a lot of tactics here. So that's something for me that could be considered. In the game, Tusk to d8 was played, and yeah, I don't understand quite this move, but maybe the idea is to put that here. I mean, but why to d8 then? I don't know. Can be understandable this way. Maybe you can try to play some intermezzo move, like for example the heart here, and then you want to reslide the tube, yeah, or maybe you want to put this here, yeah, makes sense somehow. But I wouldn't have played that. I think if you exchange this, then later on, after all the trades, you can try to play this and try to get for the exchange, and then you can push this here and try to get for this. So I don't know. So here after took to d8, this is important with your TPs that you're sure that you never take with this pawn. Else, that would create the pass pawn, and you have the same problem than before, at the exception that now this can be launched. And you see that you have 42 MPs from the Chtulu side. This is quite dangerous. So letting the piece be and just slide this here could be a great move, somehow. And you try now to slide your Sage, try to get into the game, and maybe try to capture one of the wings to get the second wing away. That can be a way, because you're already up 3 points of material, so maybe it was the try. But in the game, we have pawn takes b4, which is played, and after limb takes b4, you can't capture back because this is guarded by the heart, and now this gets very, very dangerous. We have pawn to d4, so try to again open, but after pawn captures and Sage captures, now you can decide to advance here. And now you can threat to promote at the same point, but also you can promote to threat to promote to a knight type unit and do a fork here. So maybe the material you were done is gaining some advantage. In the game we have a short castle, and after short castle also, okay, this is perfectly playable, but you have to see limb to c5. I mean, this could be able to get the limb to c5 immediately, but maybe black was afraid of some counterplay with this and this check, and then you have to cancel the king and the wing never plays. So here, okay, short castle, and then limb to c5 is played, and now you have to get back. So Sage to c4 is played, and now we have tube to e6, which is played. So somehow protecting this and preparing the heart to do some evil stuff. So it can be possible that it slides this way and makes some big pressure over here. So very interesting. Now we have Tusk to d2, which is played. And why not? This is a perfectly playable move. We have a tube to d4, which is played. And now, yeah, the position doesn't smell good, because with these two perfectly placed, the mana just jumps and accelerates. And when it reaches 100 MPs, then you can promote one of your back limb to rook type units. So it seems dangerous here in the position. We have Sage to d5, which is played, so here the threat is very simple. He wants to capture this wing, and he would capture the second one. So you cancel this, so wing to c8 is played, and reinforcing the defense of this square. So why not? This is perfectly playable. Now we have pawn to a5, trying to get the attack here and trying to get a promotion. But now the brain decides to promote the limb to a knight, and now this is direct attack to the Sage, and it just has where are you gonna play now? And seems pretty terrifying. Even this is not a big deal. But here, after that Sage to c4, you have to calculate a little what your opponent is gonna do here. For example, you can't really play this, else this is going to be captured. But if somehow there's some kind of exchange of the queens, then the Chtulu would be slightly better here. But this is not that easy to provoke this exchange, because the brute is still extracting these squares. So, yeah. In the game, we have Sage takes d4, and I think, okay, I couldn't believe my eyes with this. I mean, you have a way to deal with this kind of move. I mean, after this, there is no big deal. Your next idea maybe would be to try to get the brute into the game somehow. And I don't know, try to slide here, and then after this trade, I don't know. Or even you can try to put here this Tusk, because if this is captured, then you recapture and the second one vanishes. And you have some pressure over here, and you have to be careful with what you decide to capture. Because, for example, if you decide to capture with this, then this is a simple queen trade, and you're winning. But if you capture, for example, with the wing, then see you lose two pieces at once. So, yeah. be very careful with your pieces. Also, I'm just realizing because of this, if you do nothing, I can just capture this and you can't capture it back, else I'm going to capture this. So yeah, it gets quickly complicated, but you're not done so much of material because after, in the game, excuse me, Sage captured d4. Now the link captures and the Chtulu are now up material. And there's a pass pawn here. You don't have any queen. This piece doesn't really play for now, so you have to be very careful about what could happen. So in the game now we have pawn to a6. Seems like this is a desperado. You don't have enough well-placed pieces. You should maybe try to develop this or put it here, maybe try to develop that, or make some structure, I don't know. You have to try something and just figure out your pieces. Not going for desperado, but I mean in this position it seems like you're already lost. So we have wing to a8, just countering the stuff, Igloo to a4, so attacking the pawn, and now we have wing to d8, so now defending the limb, so you have to put pressure basically. Igloo to e1 okay, is not that precise. Something that could be interesting actually would be to play, for example, the Tusk here on f3. With the idea that you double attack this, and later on it could be interesting to play the Igloo on e1. And if you like that you would be threatened by some piece, for example, if you decide to play here, then the king is simply some kind of good answer here. So I don't know. I felt like with this Igloo to e1 this was pretty slow. But I can understand the fact that after this, maybe you have this going here. Okay, that can be understandable. But you just play the brute to f2, and then with this Igloo move, maybe you try to get some pressure here. So I don't know. So Igloo to e1 is played, hard to c5 is played, and now the Chtulu are just infiltrating the wall board, and you have to be very careful. Pawn to e5 is tried. Again, what do you play here? This is pretty hard to play. Maybe you try to get again for this idea of the Tusk here to f3, I don't know. So pawn to e5 is played, and now hard to c3, and this is a killer move here, because basically this is pinned. There is no real way where you can put it. If you put it this is taken. If you put it this to defend this is taken. Seems like you're pretty dead, so you can try to defend as you can, like this, but yeah, the position gets worsened somehow, so I don't know. Igloo to e2 is tried, but I'm not sure this is the best move to be played, because now we have a limb to d3, and this move is a disaster here. Something that could be tried also, even this is something else, is to immediately play check here, and after this, then you can play this, and you're pretty sure that the Igloo would be dead. But maybe playing the limb to d3 first is also a killer move, because you're basically asking where do you go technically. If you decide to go back, you're going to lose the piece, and if you do nothing, then that would promote somehow to knight, maybe with check, or to rook. Very hard to play. So in the game we have Tusk to e4, which is tried, but this is no use, because we have hard to c1 with check, which is played, and now you can say bye to your piece. So Igloo to e1 is played, we have hard to takes e1, and now yeah, this is hard to play. If you decide to play here, for example, you can promote here, for example, to knight type unit, and you force the trade and you would be better. But here we have rook to f1, and yeah, I guess this accelerates a little the game, because now you have the 2 to e2 promoting, and after captures, we have pawn to h5, hard to g5, and technically the Chtulu are slightly better. You up 8 points of material, and you have 37 mana on your back, so normally you're straight winning this game. So this is on this position on move 33 or 44, I don't know how you calculate this, that Yosh decided to resign the game, or maybe he lost in time, I don't know, I don't have the record for this, but the game stops here with the move list. So this game was pretty interesting, because at first you might think the Yetis have some, I don't know, activity in the beginning, but somehow the opening went to a big shot on the position. And somehow the Chtulus made their way to get some big advantage, and the opening of the c file was pretty interesting. So now we're going to see the second game just right now. Okay, so for the second game, Artika now gets the white pieces with the Centaurs faction, and Yosh gets the black pieces with the Mermaids faction. The Centaur faction is very cool because it allows you to move your opponent's pieces without their will. So technically you will be able to push, to drag them, to kick them, to, I don't know, to everything them. And it would disturb the position of your opponent and gets you some very nice tactics. So if you like to be aggressive and be a trickster, you like this faction. On the other hand, if you're a positional player and you like to go for very slow games, the Mermaids are for you. The Mermaids deal with water, and technically a lot of pieces are going to display water around the board, so the board would be completely flooded. And with all this water, all the Mermaid pieces would be able to swap between each other by pairs on the water and somehow control a little more the board, because one piece, which is the Kraken, always in water, is able to move and capture on the water. So this is a queen by one, but this is a terrifying queen because the more water it is, the more it gets powerful. You see that the game has not already started, that there are already some water on the board. This is because of the conch that displays 4 squares of water just in front of it on the start of the game. So that's already a very cool advantage here. Also, please note that this conch would swap with the king on water. So, very interesting. The game starts with pawn ram to d4, and now we have pawn to g6 and satyr to g5. And you see that on satyr to g5, which is a very surprising move, we have water created just here. Why? Because the spine here is a knight type unit that creates water on its square if it stays for one entire turn here. So passively, if you don't threat the spine and doesn't move, somehow it can create water on its square. So that's really some cool stuff. So you see that slowly but surely some water is arriving on the square. The Satyr is little weirdly placed here. Maybe it plays on the fact that this is this, but at the same point, it can be just, I don't know. I don't understand this move actually. In classic chess, normally you just play something like pawn to h6, and somehow it just kicks back and you just lost tempo. And if you think that you want to go to h4, you are on water, so the Kraken is going to capture you. So yeah, I quite don't understand this move. Maybe he was betting on this, so he would just, I don't know, or on this, and then he would weaken this. I don't know. So very weird move with Satyr to g5. But in the game we have Maid to h6, and you see that a water square is created just here and here. And this is the water trail of the Maid. When the Maid moves, it would create water on all the squares it starts to where it's end to. The only square that wouldn't create water is the square where it ends, as that would be busted here. So here 2 squares of water are created. So now it asks a question about the Satyr, what you're gonna do. If you decide to go here, that would be too much dangerous, because then the nymph would exchange itself, and after recaptures, let's say here, you see that there are a lot of water squares created here. So that would be an advantage for the Mermaids. So in this position, Artika decides to trade with Satyr takes and spine takes. And you see that this spine is not on the right square, and the square is already covered with water, so this spine is not quite cool. So now ram to e4 and the Satyr is taken, and now we have pawn to d6. We have bear to c3, spine to c6, so here a little dangerous because now there can be a push, but at the same point you just go here and then you try to survive all the pawn push of your opponent, and somehow you get some water created at the end of the day on the squares, so that's not that bad, but you have to be careful when you play this. We have a ram to a3, so be sure that this spine would never go here, and this is great to prevent against Mermaids, because these spines are lucky's bastards. We have spine to g4, infiltrating here, and ram to d5 is played. Actually, even if you play this, then it would just go back, for example, I don't know, here or here, and water square would be created here. So after the ram to d5, you see that there's some water square here. So the spine goes to e5, and now basically you have to trade it. So for example, play bear to f3 is somehow move, and then you get the trade, for example, captures, and now no more water squares are created on some places. But here in the game, Satyr to e2 is played, so getting for the exchange, I guess. And now we have a short castle. Here, I'm not very sure this is a good idea to play ram to f4. This can be understood by the fact that, for example, after ram to f4, let's say you decide to replace, I don't know, yeah, actually this is very hard to replace. And the idea is, yeah, if you capture here, you capture here, here. Okay, I can understand. But unfortunately, with this move, you leave a square hanging. This one, which was defended before. So we have the intermezzo spine to e3. And now the chief is forced to move. But what is cool is that it doesn't threat the spine because as it creates some water squares, it's out of danger. So now this is time for the spine to take on g2 with check. And after this, with king to f2, so it doesn't attack the spine again. So now the other spine are all the time all over the world to go to g4. And it goes again with check. And somehow you have to be very careful because you're going to be flooded yet. For example, let's see that you decide to go here, then the spine can decide to go here. And then you have to go here, for example. And yeah, be careful because the spine can swap with the Kraken on water. So now it would swap, for example, here with check. And now after king to e1 is forced, then he can decide to take here this tent. And now the Mermaids would be leading the game. So in this position, the Satyr takes on g4 and then the Maid recaptures with a very nice water trade. So you see that the Centaurs are not feeling quite well and somehow they open too much of their position and now the Mermaids are infiltrating. So here we have run to h3 which is played and I guess this is a blunder. This is hard to find a good move here to play against the Mermaids. But I guess what should be interesting would be to just put the bear on f3 and now try to play this and try to get some attack going on here. Because here with the round to h3, there's an awful move which can be played by the Mermaids. And especially the Mermaids here, because on water, the Maid can swap with any pawn on water. So it can swap with this pawn. And now what it indicates, it threats a fork just right there. And also it tries to go with check. So this is hard because you have also to defend. If you go here, for example, this is going to be captured here. So basically you have not to play the chief and just defend this square. So for example, you would play bear to d1, but after that I have g3 check. And you have to be very careful because if you take with the king, then the Kraken goes on h4 with check. And now, basically, you have to move the king somewhere. So, for example, if you move the king here, he will swap on water with the Kraken, check, and after, let's say, king move to e2, then it takes on h1. Also, if you want to consider the fact that you can dodge the check, for example, with after this and the Kraken go here, you want to get here. And then you say, okay, if the Kraken exchange, then I'm going to capture. No, because by the swapping, this is a double check, and you are the same trouble than before. So here on the same variation, if for example after go here and here, the king decides to ignore the threat, and let's say he decides to go here. I mean, you can't really go here as this is going to swap with the Kraken. Then you can play spine to h4, and then there is a threat to push the pawn. And what's actually interesting is that you can't even save yourself. You're just trapped. Funny enough. So here in this position, Mermaid swap with the pawn on a7 was a devastating move for me. But maybe I don't see some line. But I was very proud that some people won for the line, but they didn't dig with this g3 move, which is very interesting. But yeah, this is very incredible. So Maid to h5 is played instead of the game, so very passive. And now the bear goes on g2. So what's actually interesting with the bear is that it can swap with any enemy piece around, including the king and the pawns. So it swaps with the spine, but funny enough, something unexpected happened on the game, maybe this is a bug, is that the water square also went on g2, so that's not a real threat, and the spine is not trapped. So yeah, that is something quite unexpected here. I mean, the spine wasn't that threat because it could just go here and then it's safe. And I guess this is exactly what happened in the game as per spine to f3. Now the threat is that after, let's say the chief decides to move, I don't know, here, which would be a bad square by the way, then you can just exchange with the Kraken here. And that would be check, and technically you're going to be checkmated if you're not careful enough, and also this is going to vanish. So yeah, so in the game chief to d3 is played, which is decent move, and now we have pawn to f5. So now you have to be careful, this is your time, so play precisely, else you're going to be screwed. Here in the game, king to g3 is played. I mean, this seems insane as a move to play king to g3. I would be too much afraid on this position to play whatever. So I don't know. Maybe I would have tried at least king here, or maybe some kind of swapping if I could. But king to g3 seems insane. So yeah, why not? I would be very panicked if something would happen here. So why not? Now pawn to a5 is played, and here I have to say that I don't quite understand this move, because at any point it allows your nymphs to go on dark squares. Here a move that I would like to is play pawn to e5. It comes with a very concrete threat. If you play here, then I can push the pawn on f4, and you see that this is check. And if you decide to take with the bear on f4, then that would be quite interesting, because this bear is not guarding this square, so now the Kraken would get here with check, and now after the king move, let's say, decides to move here, then now the conch can take on f4, and you lost a piece and there's a lot of discoveries up there. So here, after this, if you decide, let's say, to continue the game, and you decide to go here, and now you can just take on an e5, and now your pawn structure is rather advanced, and this is pretty threatening. So against this move, pawn to e5, the Centaur have this very special move thanks to the ram. The ram has very special pawn that allows to push one square the pawn in front of them. So maybe you would have the ram to e5, which have been played. But now here you can even take, and now you can't retake with this pawn, else the same threat as before appends. So here, pawn to e5 seems to be a very interesting move. Pawn to a5 instead is playing on the game, and now we have 10 to f1. And seems like the Mermaids prepare for a big trade over here. So yeah, not that easy to play with the Mermaids pieces. Seems like the spine is trapped, so maybe playing this can be also interesting, maybe immediately exchange, I don't know. So in the game we have exchange immediately, and now after bear captures we have pawn to e5, so maybe the move order was somehow wrong in the time, but yeah, I can't blame them because the game is very tricky and complicated. So pawn to e5 is played, and now we have 10 captures f3, pawn captures f4 comes with check, bear captures f4, now we have maid captures, chief captures, Kraken captures, king captures, and now the simplification is a little weird because the game is almost equal. If you count the pawns here, black is down one pawn but has two pieces for the conch. So somehow this is almost equal. But now you have to face some threats. For example, there have to be the conch on f5 that could be played, but at the same point it can be countered by the bear on g3, and then you'll be forced to go back, so that's not a big threat over here. So yeah, you have to plan your attack here. Here, conch to e8 is played, and this is a decent move. Now we have bear to e6, so cutting the connection and try to infiltrate. But now we have conch to f5 with check, and seems like that this is a fork with this pawn, but this is actually not. Because after king to g3, if you dare to take here on d5, there's this awful move, bear to f6 with check. And here, what's insane is that after king goes here, you can take the conch, and you can't even capture back one of the bears. So let's say you capture this bear, because now this is going to be captured with bear to c7. And after, let's say the king move here, this is still check. And even if you go for the big trade, so for example, you go here, you take, and then after this, and this, you capture this one, this is still going to be the same idea, and after this, black is still up a rook. So basically, the Centaurs have won the game. So here in this position, instead we have bet to f4, and seems like this doesn't smell good for me. Here in the game, conch to e5 was played, but what could be interesting is to play somehow pawn to g5. Even if this can lead to this, you just win a piece. So yeah. But okay, conch to e5 instead is played, and now the centaur goes for a very little trick with ram to h4, and after conch to d5, bear exchange on f5. This is a little risky, because there's a tactic here, which is conch captures, and after king captures, conch captures again. And now the game starts to be a little less equal, because the mermaids are up 2 pawns. So after king to g4, now the king goes on g7. We have ram to b4, pawn to h5 with check, king to g3, and now a very cool move. Pawn to a4. No, this is not the move that I wanted. No, this is the move that I wanted. Now the conch x swaps with the king on g7, and now there's some kind of opposition. At the same point, the king becomes a little vulnerable here, and the conch is not active in the game. So after 10 to e1, maybe the centaur can be a little back in the game. But we have conch to e7, the opposition. What could be interesting is to play 10 to f1 check, and after, let's say, the king goes to e5, then you try to get a 10 to f4, let's say. That could be a little interesting, and you try to play the game, basically, and try to get this and this, I don't know, and you try to draw the game, basically, even this is pretty hard. King to f3 instead is played, and now we have conch to e6, so now the 10th doesn't have a lot of activity, so maybe it needs to go here, and then to go here. Now that would be a very interesting move to be played, because let's say it goes here, and maybe, I don't know, you play a random pawn push. Here there's this devastating move 10 to g5 with check, and believe it or not, this is checkmate, because of the ability of the 10th. Here the 10th can decide to kick any piece, one square diagonally of it, up to 4 squares. So if you, for example, I don't know, here, then I kick you and you move 1, 2, 3 squares on one turn. But if you go here, then I can just kick you and the king is out of the board, and so you lost the game. So here, in this position, maybe this move would be interesting. But instead we have ram to b5, and now the conch exchange with the king with check. And now don't be afraid, you can just play for something like king to g3, and the game continues basically. But here Artika made a blunder and put the king on e4. And now it comes with the very cruel conch to e5 check, and your 10th is done. So this is in this position on move 35 that Artika resigned the game and the mermaids won the game. So this game was a little wild, I have to say, because there are a lot of tactics. Interestingly enough, more mermaid tactics than centaur tactics, and this is because the mermaids just infiltrated the board with a lot of water, so you see the strength of it. So I hope you liked these two games. We're going to see each other next time for the next and last encounter of the round 1. See you then. Bye.